Hey everyone, it's Sanni again. I thought I would start like a lockdown back to basics type makeup school thing. So many of us are not really thinking of like the most, crazy going out kind of makeup or want to spend tons and tons of time doing makeup. But I thought this is a great time to practice basics, just to get the basics perfect, like so that you know exactly what you're doing. And the first one, probably the one that's most important for me, is perfect makeup, perfect foundation for very imperfect skin. My skin is not great right now. You'll see when I take the foundation off. I've been using way too many testers, trying out stuff. It's a little bit irritated. I have a little bit of melasma here, pigmentation, and it's just not feeling its best. It must be also like, the stress of the situation and stuff like that. Like all of that affects your skin. But I'll show you some tips and tricks on what I use, kind of like how I layer things and what I have found to work for me. So let's get started. Also, because I always forget these things. So I am going to be making videos, at least for now. So subscribe below, wherever the button is these days. I don't even know. And you can follow me on Instagram at MissMay27. I'll write it down here as well. But I always forget those things. I'm not good on social media, clearly. I should be really promoting stuff. Anyhow, let's get started. So the very first thing I did was exfoliate my skin when I had a shower. Nothing fancy. I actually mixed a little bit of sugar with my face wash. It's the easiest exfoliator you'll ever use. And then you ensure that the surface of your skin is perfect. Now, I have already put on my Glossier moisturizer, Priming moisturizer, I think this is called. Yeah, Priming moisturizer, because you want to let that moisturizer sink in for about 5 minutes. Now, my personal preference is to use a primer. I think it gives an even canvas to work on. It makes your foundation last longer, and also it can even out your pores a little bit. Like I've got bigger pores here in the middle of my forehead. It just makes it, easier to work with foundation, and it does last longer. My favorite for a long time has been this incredibly inconveniently packaged Illamasqua. What is this called? Hydra. Oh yeah. And it has a little spoon, but this is incredible. And one of the reasons why I love this is that it's kind of like a really light gel consistency. And I always use my hand to put this on. It just does something to foundation. It makes every foundation work harder and better when you use this. Now, it's a little bit weird because it kind of leaves like a tacky feeling on skin. And when somebody years ago first put this on me, I think it was at Selfridges in London, I thought, I was like, oh God, I'm not gonna like this. I'm gonna wash my face. But when they put the foundation on top, I was in love. So don't judge a book by its cover. So I let this usually sit for, 30 seconds, a minute, something like that. And so for you, choose a foundation that's right for your skin. Right now, I am personally in love with the Anastasia Beverly Hills Luminous Foundation, and I have 270C. Now, this is a tiny bit too dark for me now because I don't have color on my face yet. I bought it for the summer, but I started using it immediately because I am in love with this. I think in order to get a good finish, I would always recommend a medium coverage foundation. For sure, for me, medium works amazingly well. You generally don't need full coverage. Most of us don't need full coverage. So my secret is to do this in 2 different layers. And the first layer is going to be Charlotte Tilbury's Hollywood Filter and this mixed in. So the Hollywood Filter comes with a little massive lip gloss wand, not little. So I put in a little bit on the back of my hand. I would say I mix in 50-50. I use my finger to mix it in, and then I dot it around my face. So this is going to be my first layer of foundation. And I am going to use a synthetic bristle buffing brush. Always use synthetic when you are buffing in your foundation. And for me, buffing is really the best way to really work it into the skin. So I go clockwise and counterclockwise. Although I don't know if you're seeing this in a mirror, as a mirror, so I don't know if that actually you see it, but basically you're working the foundation into the skin. So one of my pet peeves is foundation getting into my brows, so I always keep a spoolie nearby so I can get rid of the foundation. Now we've done one layer with the combination of the two. The second one, I'm only going to put the teeny tiniest bit of foundation, and I am going to look at areas of pigmentation. Just basically the areas where I need a little bit more. Okay, I need a tiny bit more. A little bit more coverage. Always around my mouth here and my chin. So I'm just going to buff it into those areas. So it's good to let the foundation sit for a little bit before going on to the next stage. And this is a good time as any to talk about some of the don'ts. With this brush, don't do that. Now I'm gonna have to buff it in because I just did that. So don't pull the foundation. You're gonna end up seeing brush marks. So always keep the movement really light. One thing I do like to do sometimes is if I feel like I've got too much foundation on, as opposed to wiping anything off, I just take a damp beauty blender and I just very lightly press. I don't normally do my whole foundation with the beauty blender unless I've got heavier foundation that I really want to thin out. I sometimes do it on other people, but on myself, I prefer the buffing action. Now, we're gonna do concealer next, but the reason why I like to let the foundation sit for a little bit is part of the moisture and the kind of like the water content evaporates. So it's nice to let it sit for a little bit. My personal trick, let's see, my personal trick for concealer is to use a buffing brush. So this is traditionally an eyeshadow buffing brush. But what I love to do, this is Tarte's Shape Tape in light neutral. How I like to do concealer is I take a little tiny bit on the brush and then I do the same kind of buffing in as I did with the bigger foundation brush. So you get a super sheer layer of your concealer and no telltale marks where concealer ends and where the foundation begins. Always do concealer after foundation because the foundation will just end up brushing it away. At this stage, I like to do cream blush and cream highlighter. When I want my most perfect skin, I go for the cream products. So I am going to mix in what I like to do in order to get that super natural, super amazing look is I take a tiny bit more foundation and then I'm going to use two different Glossiers. I am going to use Glossier Cloud Paints in Storm and in Dusk. I have on my hand, I've got the two blushes and a little bit of the foundation. And I am going to use a kind of, I guess this would be a highlighter brush. And I just mix them up. This is just like, I don't know. I love cloud paints because you can kind of completely play with them like you're a proper artist. And it just is exactly the color that I blush when I blush naturally. And because I'm doing it on top of foundation and with a smaller brush, I can really blend it in super seamlessly, which I just love. Then I'm going to add a little bit of Anastasia Liquid Glow in Perla onto that little kind of concoction that I have going on my hand. I'm just gonna keep using the same brush. And this highlighter is super amazing because you can use it in such a subtle way. I have really gone off like a super highlighted highlighter, and this one is just, you don't really even notice it until you kind of start like moving your head around, especially in the evening light. It is stunning. A little bit more. I just said that I'm over highlighted, but because with this you don't really over highlight at all. A little bit just on my nose, in between my eyes. I always do a tiny bit on the cupid's bow. So again, let it sit for a little bit. I don't know, do your eyebrows. I might as well brush mine out now. And if any of your under eye concealer has kind of creased before, when you were doing the other stuff, just gently with the fluffing brush, just kind of spread it out. Now my favorite powder forever has been the Nye HD Colourless powder. As you can see, I love it. I've gone through so many of these. And I am going to use a powder puff to put it on. And I roll it around. I'm kind of pressing the powder into the skin. Now, I am not one to bake, and I really suggest if you have any wrinkles at all, don't go down the baking route. And under my eyes, I'm really gentle. And I don't let it sit there for long. I take a clean, big, fluffy brush and I brush off all the excess. So that is my routine for foundation perfection. It's what I do different versions of these with different people, but this is my foundation routine right now. And when I want my skin to look perfect in a time when it's really far from perfect, this is what I do. So let me know what you think, and I will see you again next time. Bye.